Yeah. So having those like dates with my girlfriends where it's like we're getting real and we're just gonna
Mm,
have real talk and like what's really going on. And being able to share and say the things that you can't really say to all people, right? There's a
of
few
course.
people in the circle that I can puke. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's why, and there's no judgment, and there's no,
Yeah.
all the things that come with a lot of that when you talk to people where they're like, oh, and then gossip, and they go tell people, and oh shit, she's falling apart or whatever. People blow it up and do all the things, and yeah,
Yeah,
keep it.
well, and it's tricky. I mean, I've been in a very similar place. I had a near death over a year ago, and I've had to relook at, priorities. And like you, I was going hard, hard, hard. I think after the pandemic and shit opened up, it was just like go hard, 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 plant seeds, multitask network, like, do all the things that we were like
Mhm.
prevented from doing. I know I went over the top and really just trying to create that to the point where, like you, I hit a point where life hit me really fucking hard and said, is that really going to get you where you need to go? And is that really what you want to be doing? And so this last year has been a lot of meditation and reflection and
Yep.
who is in your space and who are you listening to? I mean, because even for myself, because there has been a struggle for so long, everybody's like, well, have you thought of pivoting? Have you thought of a plan B? Have you thought of this, Angie? Have you thought? And it's like, I understand it's well intentioned and coming from a place of
Yeah.
seeing me like struggle so hard to get this purpose. But at the same time, sometimes it's like, I got to block it out because I can't even start to entertain that in my world because that's I don't want to say it's giving up, but it's kind of like giving up. And for
It
me,
is.
it's like my purpose is bigger than all the shit. I will take whatever I need to take and do whatever I need to do to fucking win and save lives. Really, is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, and it is giving up, Angie, and I'm glad you bring that up because like we know like we talk about energetically. When you energetically make a decision,
yeah,
this isn't worth it. It ain't coming back. There's no reviving that thing that you know what I mean? I mean,
yep.
you go through meditation, like all the things like we talk about it and recalibrate yourself. But if you've energetically made a decision, you're moving on and you're going to change course. And that, we've talked about this before. It's like our beliefs. If you believe now that this isn't an option, that leads to your thoughts. Now your emotions are tied to it, which now you're going to behave in a way that causes that belief to come true in your life. And so when you hold on to that belief, like you are, and you are so mission and purpose driven, you're going to be able to get it accomplished. And people always say, where there's a will, there's a way. And I'm like, nah, where there's a desire, there's a way, right? Where if you desire it enough, anybody can will up. I can not eat a cookie, even though my mouth is watering, right? Like I can not, like whatever it might be. In your case, like with people, the addicts, you can not touch something, but there's got to be a desire to not touch it. Otherwise, it's not sustainable and it's not going to really go the long haul.
100%. And I think, and kind of like you lately, I've just sort of been doing whatever, and I've been rewatching a lot of Star Wars because it's just where my heart lies for some reason. I really resonate with that shit.
That's
But
awesome.
it's all
That's funny. We're doing John Wick. Like
yeah,
people
so,
are dying and
it's like
shit.
it's a lovely world to like escape to and like being
Yeah,
like, oh yeah, I get it. But their
totally.
their whole thing, obviously, like the first movie was called The Hope, right? Right, or The Only Hope, or Their Last Hope. But it's all about, as long as there's some element of having some hope that this can happen, and this is how, I inspire all my people as a leader is to just have a little, hang on to that hope. And I know hope can sound like an empty word, but it really means a lot. As long
Oh,
as there's some kind of hope there, you like for me, I'll walk through fire. If there's the teeniest little bit of hope, okay, done. I'm going to keep doing this. If there's no hope, then it lights out. It's done. But as long as there's some hope,
it's
I
so
think we can
funny.
get there.
It's so funny you say this because I was just revisiting. My dad died of cancer like 4.5 years ago. Okay. And so, and Angie, he was sicker than a dog. He got diagnosed a year prior to dying at stage 4. Okay. He hadn't even gone into the
Mm,
doctor. So he had gone a year at stage 4. Okay. Which is unbelievable. Like the fact that he lived that long it's just not normal. Anyway, he had kept deteriorating. I mean, to the point where he couldn't even lift his fork up to his face, right? We've got this meeting, or we had an appointment with the oncologist, and I mean his labs are like, this dude is dead. Like, how is he still alive? He's dead. And I remember saying to the doctor, like, who's gonna tell this guy that he does not have much more time to live? And I'm telling you, no kidding, that my dad was planning moving out here, being with us, building, like getting the lathe out and building a bat with the boys. They did baseball, all the things
mm,
like he still was talking about, well, when I get all my stuff out here and I get garage setup. I'm going to do this with the boys and I'm going to do that with the boys. We told him on a Friday, hey, bro, you don't have much time. He died Monday.
Ah,
Like it just the a bit we have no clue how powerful we are in when you talk about that hope. When hope is gone, he was gone. Like literally, it was almost overnight. Because it takes a day or so to actually die where you're just checked out in the bed and there's no engagement, right?
yeah.
It's that fast. I mean,
Wow.
it just was like a flip switched, and I was like, holy crap, there is power in our intentions. And like you said, having hope. When hope is gone, it's over.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, God, that breaks my heart. I mean, as a person, you're like, why did I fucking tell him? We
I
shouldn't have let him
know.
move out here. And nobody, but
Well,
and doctors,
we, we had
and
him
we
out
we we
here.
we inspire so much confidence in them due to their skills, abilities, money, schooling. They know best, and when we assign them the power, man, it just takes away our own.
Yep, exactly, exactly. I think that's so true. I think we have to be careful too, who, you brought it up earlier, and that is a huge thing. I am very, very psycho. And when I'm going through these kind of times, I
Mhm,
shut down even more with my
mhm,
social group, with my people, where it's like I'm very aware of how much my energy affects other people and how much yours affects mine. We
mhm,
call it transference, right? Like where
mhm.
where we're literally transferring emotions back and forth to people. People always think like um first impressions, they're like it's based on your looks, and I was like it has nothing to do with looks. I mean, like if you're a complete slob, the only connection it would have to do with looks is because the way we present ourselves does give us an indication of what's going on the inside, but
Yeah.
it's an energetic exchange. We're transferring. Where are you at emotionally? Are you solid? Are you safe? Do you trust yourself? If you don't trust yourself and you're giving off that vibe, then I don't trust you either. And all the things, and we don't realize how fast that happens in our mind, in our brain. So with that said, in these like quiet moments of self-care,
Hmm.
most everybody but my immediate family even is pretty stiff-armed, and mama goes inside and,
Hmm.
and deals with her stuff, uh, apart from other people's. I can't handle other people's energy sometimes. You know what
Yep.
I mean? It's like
Yep.
y'all have to get out, and it's time to focus on me.
I love that. And it's so interesting because out of all my years of leading, I've never been that person. I'm community. I've always lived with people. Give me
Yeah.
your problem. Let me help you solve it. Let me be here for you. Like I just all in on everybody. I thought that was literally who I was. And it's again been in this last year of self-discovery where I've literally just spent so much time by myself and finding all that magic and joy within myself by only exposing myself to my own energies, minus all this other shit, which is pretty fucking extreme. And thank God I'm doing this. But at the same time, I agree with you. Like the protection of that space. Like I was talking to this guy, Terry Tucker, who talk about, doctors gave him 1 year to live. And he was like, I'm going to keep living. And 12 years later, he's still living with stage 4
Yep.
cancer. It's crazy because
Yep.
he
That's
holds
right.
hope and he refuses to agree. But we are talking about, you have to have that close circle. Like that's the most important thing. And when I was younger, it was all about how many. Now it's more like so exclusive. And it's like, even out of the 5, I'm one of the 5. So that's literally only space for 4
Yep.
people. And 2 of them are my kids. So
Yep.
it's like, there's not much room left in what I want to, extend for any lengths of time as far as a consistent energy that I want to exchange with people, like you said. And it's not like being mean. I don't think less
Right.
of anybody. It has nothing to do with anybody
Yep.
but myself.
Exact right. Yeah. Okay. So I'm so glad you brought that up because everybody kind of chatters about, okay, it's January 1 and what are your resolutions on that kind of crap. And I'm not a fan of those. However, just because of the timing this year, it was pretty timely for my family and I.
Mhm.
But one of the things was like everybody was kind of coming up with words, and I was like, the word for this year is me. Like
Mm.
mama's putting me first for the first time, like above my kids, above my clients, above friends. So when you say like it is nothing to, I love you all deeply. And if my door's closed in my bedroom, my kids know don't go in, right? Like mom is doing quiet time. If my friends, it's like, listen, like you said, it has nothing to do with being mean. It's just where we give and we give.
Yeah.
And at some point, there's nothing left to give until we can replenish who we are, really rediscover. Because I think this is a misnomer, is don't don't like, you kind of only hear about this if someone's going through like a midlife crisis. We
Mm.
really should be sitting back, taking time away from the world and evaluating ourselves on a regular basis. I'm not the same girl that I was 4 months ago. 2 months ago, 2 days
Mhm.
ago, right? Like we grow and we grow. And when we're high achievers and we're leading other people, we're constantly learning and growing. And so it requires a reevaluation and a reassessment of who's Brenda today,
Yeah.
right? Who is she today?
Yeah, I love that. That's exactly where I've been. Like I realized, since COVID opened up and all the travels and the groups and the learning and the mental and the spiritual, and it was just like I was just like soaking in all this information, but I was moving so quick. You can only apply certain things as you're going along because you still have to
Yeah.
keep everything in order. You got to still take care of your family, still got to take care of your business and your people and this and that. And it was just like so much motion that, like you, this New Year's, I decided to stay home and I just slowed it all by myself on a New Year's Eve where you're supposed to be out celebrating with everybody. And I'm
Yep.
like, I'm not. I'm going to spend this time by myself. I've never done this in my entire freaking life. I am just going to
Yeah.
spend me time. And I spent, oh my gosh, I want to say like 40, 50 hours in the month of December on just like meditation and alone and
Yes.
processing everything that I had learned, like journaling all the stuff and all
Yeah.
the lessons and all the people and all the things, and just spending that time in quiet and letting my brain like decompress, letting my
Mhm.
energy like rebuild so I could be a better person for everybody else by being a better person for myself.
Yes, yes, it's so important and it's so underestimated. And I get, like we were kind of forced into like COVID where we had to shut down. Our choice was taken from us, right?
Yes.
And so that's where like that frenzy kind of came back out in all of us where it opened up and we're like, yeah, people, right? But there's a balance and there's always everything's always got to get balanced out. In fact, I just read one of the things I do a lot is when I go into these zones is I read. I do a lot of reading. It
Mhm.
was Wired for Wealth. uh I can't remember. I think it's Trivedi, Dr. Alec Trivedi. Anyway, fan freaking tastic. I read a lot, and it's one of the best books I've ever written,
Wow.
simply because of the questions that it had in the neuroscience behind those questions. So he would give you prompts, and he basically like some questions you had to literally set a timer for 90 seconds, and you had to keep writing. So this was focused on wealth. I had seen him speak this last fall, and I went up and chatted with him, and I said, "Hey, listen." I said he gets all the neuroscience stuff, and I could pick that up in his delivery. And I said, listen, my kids and I are just coming off of basically 20 years of trauma with my
Yeah.
ex-husband. He just passed away, like they didn't speak to him, but they went and said goodbye, like one didn't, and all these things. Like, should we come visit you? I was like, should we just come visit you and have you like work on our brains? You know what I mean? Because it's trauma. Like this
Yeah.
is trauma that causes your brain to not function at its optimum, right?
And it dysregulates your central nervous system, all that. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. And we're not even making rational decisions at that point, and we're
Yep.
not wanting, you get it with rehab. This is what leads a lot of people into addiction
Yeah.
because they don't know how to cope with this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to share with this 90-second deal. So he said to me, he goes, read the book and then come back to me. And I was like, holy crap, this book is off the charts, one of the best I've ever read. Like I can't even believe how fun. I told my kids, I said, we're not starting a business until y'all have read this book, like period. Like I'm not doing anything with you until get this book under your belt. So the whole premise behind that 90 seconds is like in his, because you can apply this to anything. And I think that's the misnomer. People are like, oh, it's just about money. Well, first of all, everything with us is about money. We can't survive without money, which is why, like all the things when can't get funding in a business and you've got this passion, it's like, shit, what the hell do we do? Because we can't survive without it, right?
Right.
So when you do these questions, there's layers of depths into your subconscious that you get to. That
Mm.
he's like, you start up here in the frontal lobe, and like for the layman's terms, then you kind of get a little deeper in, and then you really get to the primal drive in you. So when like one of the questions was like, okay, I'm going to say a word for 90 seconds, write everything you think. So it's like Porsche, like a Porsche car. And so
Yeah.
you write all the things, but it really reveals in you what's going on and what your belief system is around that item. And
Mm.
this is how people who don't necessarily like to journal, I used to be one of those. I've gotten better at it, but journaling's fantastic. But
Mhm.
if you don't love to do that, do this exercise. Choose a word like love, relationship, addiction, alcohol, whatever it might be, financing, whatever it is. Let it roll for 90 seconds, set a timer, and see what really comes out. And now you're like, oh, now I got something to work with.
And when you have now that something to work with, what next? How do you work with it? Is it like affirmations? Is it, limiting
Oh,
beliefs? So yeah, how do you use that to work with?
yeah. So one of his questions, okay, so this is really profound. I'm going to share this. I haven't shared this with anybody. One of his questions was, if you lost everything, like if you lost all your money, what's the worst case scenario? So what he does is he asks, okay, what's so bad about that? Okay, what's so bad about that? Okay, what's so bad about that? Right? Like he kind of goes down these series of questions when when you've got an item like a Porsche, like, okay, it's expensive. Well, what's so bad about that? Well, you have to leverage a mortgage. I don't know. You have to work your ass off. You really kind of discover, oh crap, I realize I don't want to, and this is who I am. I don't want to work that hard.
Yeah.
My important thing is to be home with my kids. I don't need to drive and be, multimillionaire and have all these things. My kids are my Range Rovers. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's where my investment goes. So when you ask those questions and you're digging deep, you're really finding out what the core issue is and what really you're really afraid of, right? Because we always kind of give a surface level answer.
Yeah.
So back to this question of what would really happen, it was so crazy, Angie, because my answer was I would not be of value to my children. How fucked is
Mm.
that? Like, I was
Yeah.
like, where did this attachment to value to my kids go, right? Like
Yeah.
how did that get associated with money? It's such a crazy thing. So then it caused me to think, and this is where where do you go with this? You keep asking yourself these questions. Well, hold on. Where did that come from? What parent like gave me this notion, or what belief did I pick up somewhere along the way to believe that I'm not of value to someone? And then I went through and I was like, well, shit, my mom used and abused money to control everybody, to do all these things. So it was like she wanted everybody to be dependent on her. So it's sometimes we discover it's not even our own shit, right? Like I
Most of
was
the
like,
time it's not. It's generational for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So as I'm uncovering all this, I'm like, damn, right? Like
Yeah.
so that's where we came up and we had the conversation with the kids where we're doing generational legacy wealth,
Mm.
not this we all drive fancy cars bull crap and flashy whatevers. We're changing the legacy of our family and
Yeah.
their education level and that generational shit that we've been heaped on that we get to change and shift. So just
Oh.
asking your questions and sitting with yourself.
Well, and I love that because so often we hear, and you know, because we hear and see all the same speakers, what's your limiting beliefs? What's your limiting
Ugh.
belief? It's like, well, tell me. If I knew what it was, it wouldn't be there. So what is the tool for finding it so that I can actually recognize it and confront it, handle it, change it, but it bothers me when people are like, oh, it's cool. Just figure out your limiting belief. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, what is that? I
You
grew up poor. Like, I don't know, what? And so I
you
love
would
this
love
because it's like practical application to get to the source of that, to be able to discover it and look at it and analyze it and change it ultimately.
You would love that book because he
I'm
debunks that.
in.
And that's I have gotten so frustrated. In fact, my sweet, sweet friend, God bless her, she was a good intention, but she was like, hey, read the book. Shit, I don't even know what it is. It was a short little book, something about the secret of life. I don't know.
Oh, The Secret.
Well, it's not The Secret. It was like
Oh,
it's something different. I'll have to text it
oh,
to
okay.
you, but it was very similar. Okay, so I'm like, The Secret's bullshit. It's
Yeah.
absolute bullshit. Because exactly what you're saying with these affirmations, what people don't understand is our brain is smarter than we are, right? Like we can say, like, say you're 40 pounds overweight, but you affirm and you're like, I'm fit. I'm super fit. I am super fit today. I am such a good runner. When I run, my butt doesn't jiggle and things are not flopping around. Like I am awesome. And you go right, your brain is like, you're a fucking liar. I know you're not fit. You're 40 pounds overweight because every time you walk by that mirror, you're like, oh, girl, you got 40 pounds to lose, right? And you're
Yeah.
jiggling as you go down that street and you know it and you feel it and everybody notices it. You're certain of it and all these things, right?
Yeah.
Brain is a goal achieving machine
Mm.
when and only when emotions are involved with them. And that's what people don't understand. You can say, I'm fit, I'm fit, I'm fit. All you're doing is reinforcing that you're not fit because your
Yeah.
brain knows you're lying through its teeth. If you walk by that mirror and you say, I cannot wait to feel what it feels like when I've dropped these 40 pounds. Like, I'm going to look so good. And what is my butt going to look like? And what is my stomach going to look like? And you're stepping into the feeling of what that feels like. Now you've got a mission. Now you can achieve the goal. The brain is a goal achieving machine, is what a lot of people say out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Only when emotions are involved. And that's what people miss out on. And that's what they don't do. So a lot of that
Mm.
visualizing and journaling, what's it going to feel like to have the refinancing? What's it going to feel like to have the love of my life? What's it going to feel like to be 40 pounds? What's it going to feel like to vacation with my kids 8 times a year instead of dragging them to corporate sessions? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I love that because you're right. And we can hear all this logic, but I know like when I've been in a really bad place, just feel like it exists. And it's like, it's almost too far for me to even
Yeah.
have that, because I'm so fucking worried about survival right now that me pretending, like I'm a kid in this like Neverland, it just never resonated with me. And so this has been my quest for the last few years, is like, should I be, grateful in the moment, grateful for what is coming to me, pretend like it's already here. But I love how you said your brain knows the difference, because I've heard, and I know you have from a lot of people, your brain doesn't know the difference. And it's like, well, I think it does. I think my brain fucking does know the difference. Now, does that mean I can't get my heart to override it with heart coherence like Joe
Yep.
Dispenza and really feel it, and then my brain knows it? Yes.
ma'am.
But I think you got to get that heart on board before you're going to get your brain on board.
Do you know our heart has more like neural pathways around it than our brain does?
Yeah.
It's
By a
freaking
lot.
fascinating. It's
By a
unbelievable to
lot.
me. And this is not talked about by people. Crazy thing, my boys, their best friend, he was 16 years old and he had his first heart transplant. In fact, y'all are listening and praying people are just good vibe people. I'm a good viber. Like, send good vibes to this poor kid, because he is 17, almost 18 years old, back down at Stanford, having issues with his heart. But my kid and I were chatting about it, and he's like, yeah, he goes, Mom, he goes, you realize that he doesn't feel adrenaline? And I was like, what? And he goes, his heart, when they do a transplant, did you know this? I didn't know this. I mean, it makes logical sense knowing what our hearts are capable of. But when you get a transplant, you cut all those nerves off. And now he can't, like, adrenaline, it doesn't kick in for him like it does for us. And the way we were kind of took it another step, we're like, shit, does he not feel anxiety? Like, how cool would that be?
Right. So there is a pro to that.
Yeah, I mean,
you could be like a daredevil. It's like, it's fine.
yeah, we're good. We're good.
Yeah.
Everything's fine.
Ah.
But that was fascinating. We really underestimate the heart.
Oh my God. And that totally makes so much sense. I mean, I've had surgeries where they've cut things, and you're right. It deadens all those nerves. All those pathways are literally gone. And I think you can regrow them in time, probably with a lot of visualization exercises. But what a fascinating thought to think it's just gone. So the heart is huge. I've learned so much about it this year with equine therapy. Have you ever done equine therapy?
Yeah, I used to show horses. I actually,
So, their heart centers are like this, and they pick up on stuff, and it's like, oh my God. And they're like mirrors to us. I mean, I was so fucking fascinated by it. I love it. I tried that last year for the first time, and I ended up doing it 3 times, one of which was in Costa Rica. Amazing. But I was like, oh, I get it now. I used to love riding horses, and I always connected with them. And I always thought it was funny how I would always get the naughty horse, because I would let them eat and they would hold back, and then they would run and I would let them do it. I always had an agreement in a game with these horses. But I realized we just we're connecting. It was almost like Avatar.
Oh my God, this cracks me up, Angie, because it's the same thing. In fact, I used to show horses, right? Like, I think we've talked about the horses before. And I was like, my horses were always chaotic. Like, I was like, what the hell? Well, I look back, I was such a mess as a teenager, a complete shit show, like to the nth degree, right? No wonder when we realized how much that's that transference we were talking about earlier, how much we share emotions with people and animals and all the things. Now I've often thought, I'm like, okay, now that I've done all this work, I wonder what kind of horse I would attract. Like, it would be so much more fun now. We would be like, oh, this is peace and love. Like,
yeah, right.
So much better.
That's not really who we are, though, as being
No.
just be more us than ever.
Until we want to kill you.
Yeah, just so rebellious. Like, oh, you want me to go that way? I'm going the other way. Like, they would just be even more us.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, it could be dangerous. But I have thought about it. It's funny you bring that up, because I've thought, man, I wonder how different it would be showing, like, engaging with them now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll have to try it sometime. I would be totally down for that. I love it. I love animals. For me, they're always, I don't want to say a reflection of me, but that's how I utilize them, almost as mirrors to myself, just because I connect, and I just love animals so unconditionally, more than the majority of people on this planet. I just love animals.
Well, let's just be real. They're a lot simpler to love. Like, they're just easier.
They are. They really are. I mean,
They don't
sometimes we don't
talk back.
understand, but we're like, that's okay. I don't need to.
Yeah, exactly. For very selfish reasons, we're like, yeah, they're better. Yeah, I get that. I totally get that.
Yeah, dude. My dog is as loyal as they get. He's so happy to see me every time I walk in the room, and I could have just walked right out. I walked right back in. He's like, oh my God, you're here.
You're back again.
Yay.
I know, but that's good. There's some therapy in that. And I think because I mean, they can deal with trauma too, but I think they have a much higher threshold as
Mhm.
opposed to us humans as far as trauma is concerned, which is what grounds them. Like they're so
Mm.
grounding for us, where they are more consistent and stable in their happy emotions, what we would consider a higher elevation. And that's one thing, even when I'm training, I don't talk about, we will say negative and positive emotions, but we clarify where it's like, every emotion is awesome, right? We couldn't know, back to that balance, that law of polarity. We
Mhm.
wouldn't know day versus if we didn't have night. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
there's some things that
Mhm.
we've got to have that opposite in order to feel. If we didn't feel hatred, how can we feel love, right? And really enter into that space. And I kind of wrestled with that analogy for a lot of my life, Angie. I was like, I don't know
Mm.
if that I buy that. Like that's bullshit. And as I get older and the more I realize, I'm like, there is a balance. There really is a balance. And it's so good for us to experience. Where it becomes toxic is when we live. And Joe Dispenza talks about that. That now becomes our personality of a
Mhm.
pretty ugly trait that we're like, okay, too much of hatred, that's a problem.
Mhm.
Everybody hates you now. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and it is all about what you put out is what you get back. I know I went through this with one of my partners, and I was like, there was a trust thing, his continual distrust of me. And I'm like, I've absolutely done nothing to earn that distrust. But it
Yeah.
was just their own distrust in themselves and the
Yes.
shit that they've done that they were just mirroring onto me, which was not my hang up. I'm like as trusting as you get. I mean, obviously I'm very protective and smart about my stuff, but I'm also like, I don't, that's not true. I am distrustful of certain people, but like you said, it's the energies. It's like you pick up on stuff. But
Yeah.
overall, I'd much prefer to just trust that everything is right and then handle shit when it goes wrong.
Yep. Yep. It's so funny. I saw a meme the other day that said, I'm an extrovert with the right energy. I'm an introvert with the wrong energy. And it was like, it's nothing personal. It's just the vibration of which, because all the, like for people who don't maybe study this like we do, just to
Mhm.
clarify what we're talking about, emotions are energy. Like you put this desk under a microscope and it moves. I don't understand. It's way above my freaking pay grade. My brain cannot wrap around that. Everything is energy, though, including our emotions. So they carry a vibration. There's a book, Power versus Force, by
Mm-hmm.
Hawkins. Yep. And he breaks down all the science where they literally studied the emotions and put them on a scale. And when we get past neutrality and we get into positive emotions, quote unquote, right? Because we want all the emotions, not positive or negative, but they're weaker. Those negative emotions are weaker and they cause muscle testing. They'll cause the muscle to break and to cave because they're a lower megahertz measurement of energy. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you're in those positive ones in the truth and you get to share those spaces with everybody, that emotion with everybody, like you said, we pick up on it. And our subconscious is like a little energy reader because everything's energy. We have to know how to operate with it, right? Like even in the subconscious level, that's like I said, that first impression, your brain has already figured out somebody, whether they're giving off that mistrust, and it's usually a reflection of what's going on for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so great that you said that because I was just recently at the Dr. Gabriella Lyons thing, and she had a former Secret Service agent, this chick. She was just badass. And they were talking about that when you meet somebody, how much is actually verbal? And it's like, it's only like 30%. And like
Yes.
40 or 50 or 60,
Oh,
something
no.
crazy is the nonverbal cues. And then, and which I describe as that's your energy. Yes, it's how your body is like sort of micro moving and stuff like that. But what's behind
Oh,
that? It's the energy.
okay. Okay. So I actually teach this. 7% of our communication is only done through words.
Seven.
Okay.
That's what it is. It
Seven.
was so low. I was like, what?
Yep.
Yeah.
7 freaking%. So think like text or email. This now give grace to people via text and email because now you can understand why things could so often be misunderstood through text or email, right?
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh shit, that's not at all what they meant. But we read it based off of the lens of life with which we look through, and we can take offense. We make meaning about stuff. We take offense to things that people say, when in reality, that's probably not at all what they meant to say, right? But whatever.
Mhm.
38% of our language is done through voice and inflection.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's like voice message or Voxer, voice text back and forth. I do that a ton. I'll do that over text any day of the week with, not to mention I can 3x speed it. So it cuts down my time. These are one of the efficiency
Yes.
things I do.
Oh, you're one of those. I listen to my audibles on like two. Everyone's like,
Yep.
how do you even understand? I'm like, I need it that fast.
I know, right? Like my brain's firing so fast. If you guys
Yeah.
could see how fast this thing goes, it's just crazy.
I
Oh
love it.
yeah, you're speaking my language.
Yeah, yeah.
So that leaves 55% is body language and facial expression.
Wow.
So I'm going to share this story. One of my girlfriends just said here a few weeks ago, she saw one of my videos. She's like, Brenda, she's like, you look great. What's going on? Like, what'd you do? And I thought about it, and I was like, well, first of all, my ex-husband died. Like there's a lot of stress that's just got relieved. But really, I was like, when all these things happened with my kids 3.5 years ago for the first time, I did Botox. I had like, I was furrowing my brow, I was so upset. I literally was like putting these caves in my forehead.
Yeah.
After all this got done, he died. I was like, I don't think I need it. My Botox is worn off. And
Wow.
so when people were saying like you look great, I'm like, I think you get to see my expression again. You know what I mean? And you
Yeah.
get to see that we have like, and I can't remember the exact numbers. We've got like 80 something muscles in our face that produce over 7,000 facial expressions. Like
Wow.
that's an insane amount of feedback that we give to each other. So then you like go back to COVID and all those kids who had their faces covered up, those babies that like are seeing nothing from people. Oh shit. We're going to have a massive emotional intelligence fallout from some of those kids.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, we're already seeing it. Like my demographic, even young kids, it's
Yeah.
70% alcohol because it was so
It was
seen
essential.
as yeah, it was okay. They kept the alcohol stores open. So now it's
Yeah.
like the vast majority are alcohol, but also couple that with the mental shit that people went through with the separation and the distancing and the masks, and like people are messed up now. It's beyond the addiction. I mean, obviously there is the addiction, but there's also a lot of other mental health stuff that's now here that was never there before.
It's so funny you say that because you will understand this in the addiction world. I was actually in an argument with a banter, like whatever, with a police officer, and we were debating the whole marijuana. Like, should it be legalized? Should it not? In Idaho it's not, and right next door, Oregon, it is. So that we were, chatting because they deal with it a lot, even though it's technically illegal in this state. It's like a 45-minute drive, right?
Mm.
And he was arguing, he's like, it's the gateway drug. And I was like, it is not. Like, I'm so sick of fucking hearing that. It
Mhm.
is not the gateway drug. The gateway drug is lack of emotional intelligence. Shit happened to these kids, people, somewhere along the lines. Nobody equipped them with how to deal with their crap. And they're numbing and dumbing it out because they don't freaking know what to do, but they can't feel that pain anymore. So they're doing whatever it takes to numb and dumb it out. It is not the fucking gateway drug. It makes me so angry when they say that. I was like, wake the fuck up. It has nothing to do with it was like shootings, right? The gun did not get up and walk into that school building. What are we doing with people and how are we fucking helping them so that they're not losing their shit and taking kids out? Like that it's the emotional intelligence is what it boils down to. I
You
get really
are
pissed
a
off about this.
million percent correct on that. I've had multiple people on the show who've had very similar upbringings to mine. I ended up using drugs. That was how I coped with it. And I've
Yeah.
had other people like Ray who introduced us.
Yeah.
He ended
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
very similar upbringing, but he went hard. Like he went all
Yep.
in on the service. He didn't get an addiction to drugs or alcohol. Maybe he got addicted to something else. But the both paths were stemmed from unhealed, unhandled trauma, and
Yes.
how we choose as human beings to do that. And sometimes it's a good thing, like Ray, it propelled him into, a life of service and doing good things. He used it as a strength. Whereas for me, I mean, ultimately it was my strength because here I still am 30 years
Yeah.
later doing this, but it was my coping mechanism. And really, like you said, what we need to handle and what we all need to handle is that childhood trauma.
Yes.
And I think people shy away from that because they hear trauma and they think, oh, well, yes, incest, molestation, somebody was murdered. You're like exposed to like, at least in my mind, it was something catastrophic. And not that I didn't have all that, I minimized it. But
Yeah.
I think some people don't realize even trauma of divorce is
Yes.
trauma. Like there's a
Yes.
massive upheaval of things, seeing, your cat run away or get ran over, trauma. Like, and
Totally.
then you build all these things to like, protect and help yourself. So we have to handle that childhood trauma. And it always stems back to childhood trauma.
It totally does. And I'll be honest, like in fact, Joe Dispenza's book, like Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, I was like,
Mhm.
fuck that guy. Like, I don't like the title. I did not read that book for like 2 years. It sat on my shelf. How stupid is that? Obviously, on a like
Because you didn't
subconsciously,
like the title.
I know. I'm like,
I
what
love
the hell?
that.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm good with me. Like you asked, like I don't need to break the habit of being me. And then I read it and I was like, oh shit,
Yeah.
I need to break the habit of being me in a big way, right? Like there's so much shit here. And so I think that's the realization, what you're talking about, this childhood trauma, because I kind of associate, I had the same response to the term childhood trauma. I don't want to go back to that shit. I don't want to live there. And I think this is a difference. And this is why you and I do the work that we do. A lot of counseling keeps you in that trauma space.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about it and talk about it and talk about, well, how did you feel? Well, fuck, I don't want to feel that anymore. Like, how are we rewiring to where I want to go? Right. And that's the change maker. That's where things actually shift in people's life. Yes, we have to deal with it, but like you and I do, and because I know you do this, like we get into it, we eradicate that shit and move on. We gather what we need to, we heal what we need to, and we utilize that so that we can be smart enough to propel us forward, like Ray did, right? Like,
Yeah.
but
And
people
not
aren't
make the same mistakes and not do the same things.
Yep, totally,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that exactly what you said. The trauma can be anything.
Yeah.
People think and associate like it's got to be this big thing. Somebody could have snatched your French fry at lunch when you were in fourth grade, and you forever have a food issue. I mean, it could be that stupid.
It's 100% true. Well, and I think there's layers to the onion, right? Like first you peel off the big obvious trauma. Like, okay, yeah, that's obvious. That was big bad, and I changed my life because of it and did this. And but then the more work and the older you get and the longer you've been around, you start, there's more onion, there's more onion, there's more
That's
onion. Like it's literally never ending. And sometimes, you know, people come in just to trigger certain parts of your fucking onion. You're like, damn it, man, I thought I was doing all good, but here we go. And I think you're like me. I love that dark side. Well, I do love the dark side, but like the shadow work, like show me the shit. Like let me get in there so I can figure it out so that I can then be causative over it. Like help me know what I don't know.
Totally, totally. That's what was so cool about that doctor, the Wired for Wealth or whatever. I think he calls himself Dr. Rewire. Because it literally does rewire your brain. And so, like, the science behind all of this shift and change and growth work that we all do, right, is we're literally rewiring our brain. Our neural pathways, when we develop, say, like, whatever. So let's use that French fry analogy. So every time I eat French fries now I'm like, I'm all terrified. I've got anxiety. I'm anxious. I'm looking around. Who's going to snatch my French fry? Like all these things. And you become this, like, these habits begin to form. Well, what's happening in our brain, the neural pathways, the more they work together, they get like locked and loaded. It's like a cow rut, right? Like when cows go back and forth over that path over and over and over and over and over, it's like 2 feet down from the regular earth. They've worn this pathway so deep. Well, when we try to change behavior, what we're really trying to do is rewire our brain. And that's what people don't understand. They get frustrated with this whole 21 days, you got a new habit bullshit. Well, the reason people keep getting frustrated with themselves, setting goals, not achieving them is, first of all, they're lied to. It doesn't take 21 days to create a new habit. It takes 66 days for you to actively deal with your brain and change the way that the neural pathways lock and load. You're severing the old habit in the first 21 days. That's all you're doing. You're severing the neural pathways. Then the rest of the time, you're now rebuilding a different pathway that we want to perceive as a good habit, as something better. Like I said, we're not really changing the habit. What we're really doing is rewiring the brain.
I love that. And it just so 100% plays into why Elevate is Elevate. First of all, our program is 66 days around. That was by design. But also, like we were talking about with other modalities, like say AA or NA, you're talking about your story. You're just keeping yourself, you're just cementing it in over and over. I'm an addict. Here's my story. I'm an addict. Here's my story. You start identifying with this story and this persona. And even though you haven't used in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, I'm still this addict. And here's still my story. And it's like, how are you ever going to move on and overcome your adversity if you're constantly keeping yourself in that place? And so, and like you said, so much of that is the rewiring. So if you eliminate that as part of your rewiring of healthy habits and bad habits, you can literally create a new you where that's not who you are anymore.
Yes.
But you got to give yourself that space, time, attention, and tools to do it correctly, or else you're just cementing in everything that is your trauma.
Totally, totally. It's so true. I love, and you're going to love that book. You got to read that book, and then you need to call and talk to me about it, because not everybody can talk at this level of shit, right? You know what I mean? Where it's like, we completely get it, where that's what I love about you and your program is I cannot stand when you identify, this is why trauma or divorce, like you said, can be so traumatic. I actually think they say like the top three traumas are like death, divorce, and moving, right? Like the stressors, top three stressors. And I arguably would say that divorce is hands down the most challenging, simply because it impacts every single area of your life. There's not a single, your friend group, the car you drive, where you live, when you can go on vacation with your kids if you've got kids, how far you can go on vacation. Are they going to let you out of the country? They're going to be an asshole and they're going to be like, nope, you have to be back in 5.7 days. You know what I mean? And they're going to hold you to it and all the things.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And their identity. So when you talk about identity of identifying as I'm an addict or I'm an alcoholic or
I'm a divorcee.
Yeah, yes. Oh my hell. Like, yeah, like I hate that on like, intake forms. It's like married, divorced. There's no single. There's like, I'm single. I don't have to identify as divorced. That's not what I choose to identify with. I choose to identify with single and fucking loving life. And if you want to join this train, this party train, come on up. Right. Otherwise, I'm not the downer.
Yeah.
But people get so wrapped up in this identity. And now where focus goes, your life goes. The more you focus on that, because your emotions now are bought in, or you wouldn't identify with it. And now you're down a gravy train that we don't enjoy.
No. And how do you overcome anything if you're choosing to identify with it as this is who I am?
Right. Yes. Right.
You'll never rise above that. You will forever. That's who you are. Hi, I'm Angie. I'm an addict, even though I haven't used in 20 years. Let me tell you my story of when I was 14 years old and using. It's like, how does that have any relevance on who you are as a person today? Let's talk about the cool shit you've done since then. Yes. And because of that past, like how you overcame and the cool shit you're doing because of that.
Totally. Totally. It's very funny when we talk, like, when you first meet people and you always say like, hey, like, tell me about you. What's the first thing people always start talking about?
School, work.
Like what, like everyone identifies as, well, I do such and such and such, right? In fact, I went through a leadership program, part of this little journey of where I just realized, okay, I need to focus on me. I lead other people all the time. I needed to be led for a minute. So I did this leadership program for high achievers this last summer. And one of the things that they had us do is to write our contract. What is our contract with who we are? So like mine is, so like if you come up to me and say, hey, Brenda, why don't you tell me who you are? My reply now, after going through that, is I'm an authentic, powerful, passionate woman, right? That's who I am at the core of who I'm being. I'm not a leadership development trainer. I'm not a mama for boys. I'm not a divorcee. I'm not any of that shit. I'm not addicted to working out, like all that crap. I'm an authentic, powerful, passionate woman. That's who I am. And if you want to engage with me and you want to have some kind of deeper relationship, you better be prepared for some serious passion to come out, because you put those three together and that's serious intensity, right? I think we resonate in that way.
Oh, hell yeah. Dude, I love that. That was like resonating with your soul. My soul. I was like, oh, should I just steal hers? Because I am totally like all about that.
Yeah, right? Like, I mean, yeah, because and that's, like you said, what we get to identify with instead of this thing that we're never going to get over. I mean, you're just walking and loaded that cow route, those neural pathways of this is who you are. Well, shit, I don't want to be who I was 3 months ago. No. I just don't. Like, I'm on a growth journey, and that changes.
Well, and that's where I don't want to sway this too much in this direction, where it's very frustrating where kids are allowed to do life-changing permanent things to themselves at such a young age. Because if you were to pin me in any kind of thoughts, viewpoints, opinions I had as a young teenager, and now you live with that for the rest of your life, giving yourself no room for growth and exploration. And, is that really who I am? Like, it's like, to me, it's one of the most awful things you can do to a human being in the world that we live in right now.
I agree with you 10,000%. It just disturbs me on a level. Like I literally, in fact, for the first time I had a conversation with my kids, my older kids, I was like, you guys may not want to have kids. Like, it's different now. And they're like, no, it's not different. Nothing's different. There's always shit. And I was like, no, I think it's different. Like, the fact we can't let you drive. You are not legally allowed to drink. You study the brain and the way that the brain forms. Boys in particular, their brain isn't even done forming until they're 25. Like, some 40, right? Let's just be honest. It takes some of them until friggin' 40.
Some so never. No.
Yeah, fact. Yeah, exactly. There's a part that just always stays boy. But there's that part that I love, right? Like,
it is. Like, that's why we're a good counterpart. Yes, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yet we're letting them make these life-altering, irrevocable decisions, and we can't figure out why there's a 50+% suicide rate for people who have done that. And we're saying, go ahead, teenager, you 12-year-old. Like, I wouldn't let my 13-year-old decide what to do with his money right now. Like, he doesn't get to make that decision. Why the hell would I give him reign and authority? I can't even, it is so irrational to me. I can't even rationalize it. My brain.
Well, and that's where I'm at. I'm like, how can anybody who's okay with this, what possible rationale do they have to justify such an just crazy thing? Like, how in their minds, like our governor, how in your mind is this, how can you rationalize this as being okay in any sense of the word? Anybody who knows anything about hormones and growth and like you said, science and bodies, it just doesn't make any sense.
Not at all. Not at all. And this is the shit that we've come to. Like, it absolutely just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Those poor kids. I mean, I just think, Jesus, like, it's disturbing. It's absolutely disturbing to me.
Well, and I think that's why you do what you do. I do what I do is, we're just trying to change that one little corner in the way that we can to better help people. So maybe that's not an option or choice by a parent or, when they're thinking about things, sort of giving people back themselves so that they can rationally make decisions, not based out of fear or substances or all the things that people feel compelled or they don't want to offend anybody, so we're trying to free people so that they can make the right decisions for themselves and their families.
Angie, you just said something that's really important, and it's getting them back to themselves. So this is actually one of the things that I train on is we have what we call the conditional gap. We've got parental conditioning, school conditioning, religious conditioning, and social conditioning, right? Like, think of any one of these, like social conditioning. You see the neighbor dragging their 2-year-old, down the street kicking and screaming, but then they post a picture 2 hours later and they're like, I'm the best mom. We're doing Play-Doh and everything's awesome today and we had the best day. It's like, really? I just saw like that kid throwing a full-blown full throttle adult sized temper tantrum right here, but you're presenting to the world everything's awesome, right? So we're conditioned at this point via all these different avenues, the social, parental, school, and religious conditioning of who we should be. I actually use this picture, it's got glass, and so theoretically, sorry, I got an alarm going off here. It's 11:11. Would you think of that?
Love that. Angel
numbers. I know, right?
Yep.
My alarm says, what would it do? Go give as if it's your last shot to give to them today. That's my reminder each day in our service that we do. But anyway, you take this picture, right? And like for light reflection, I should pull the glass off, right? I refuse to do it for this reason, where there's this beautiful piece of artwork. We're all created differently. We're all like even there's extraordinarily rare for identical twins to have the same DNA, right? No two snowflakes are the same. We know all this. Yet we all conform all the time. So it's like taking all that conditioning is like taking black paint and putting it over this beautiful piece of artwork. What you and I do, we come in and we take a rag and we teach people how to start removing that black paint. So they can step into their authentic identity, what they were created to be, and whoever, God, universe, source. The more I study it, the more I'm like, shit, I do not know what it is. And I don't need to know. Like, I am so good with not having to know. I don't know what it is, but we were created individually for our own specific purpose, and giving people the tools and the keys to the kingdom of how to discover themselves. If we would do this with those kids that are making this decision much sooner, maybe they would make that decision.
Right. But again, how much are they being led because their parents are being good children and doing what society says, which is you let them, make these decisions and be the certain way if they want to be that way. I mean, I would have been a prime candidate. I was the ultimate tomboy, but I'm still very much a girly girl. And thank God back then we didn't have to pick a lane. It was like being all the lanes. Like, sweet, I'm going to embrace, like we talked about, the polarity, the masculine, the feminine. I'm going to be in both. I'm going to be in either. I'm going to be in none. I mean, it doesn't even fucking matter. It's just a body. And so, oh man, well, that's why we're doing what we're doing. That's all I can say. It's like we've got our hands full.
Well, we do, this is a very interesting conversation I had with one of my good friends. She's down in California also, actually. And she was saying, she was listening, she's pretty religious. She was listening to a sermon, and she was sharing with me. She's like, what do you think about this? I got a hair. Sorry. She's like, what do you think about this? She's like, this pastor basically had said that his theory of this dysfunction and so much questioning over your DNA delivered type, right? Like, why are we even questioning that in any capacity on the front end anyway, right? Like as on a cellular level, your X or Y chromosome, period. That's it. And when you just bring up the masculine and feminine energy, it doesn't mean that we don't all have both. Men have feminine sides to them as well, as much as they don't like to admit. Like Ray hates, he's like, no, I don't. He's like, okay, yes, no, I don't. Whatever. They hate to admit that.
He would fight that to the end, totally.
He totally will, right? Like for
Yeah.
sure. And I'm like, oh, but Ray, it's so cute of you, right? But the reality is like we have emasculated men as a society so much. His theory was like there's confusion because we have not allowed men to be men. We haven't even allowed women to be women, right? Like to some extent. And so there's this confusion going on, which sets the stage for these poor kids, that energy of confusion where they're like, well, shit, if everybody else is confused, then so am I. I don't know what to do with myself either. And I was like, that's a pretty, like I could sink my teeth into that a little bit. Like, I think he was onto something.
That is a very interesting thought. And it totally makes sense, especially when we keep talking about the confusion with energy and what they're being inundated with and told what to think or how to feel or you like that girl doll. Oh, good. So that means you want to be a girl, right? Like, I get it. Let's help you do that. And it's like, well, no, I just wanted this doll because it was right there. Like, I don't know. There's some deep-seated like anything behind it.
Right. Yeah, my oldest went through a pink phase when he was younger. And we were like, oh, go for it, dude. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
We're confident in your masculinity. Like, you know what I mean? You can wear pink if you want to. In fact,
Yeah.
he saw some pictures. He's like, why was I in pink all the time? I was like, it was your color of choice at the time, bro. Like, there's no judgment.
It's so funny. My son did the same, but he did it with long hair. Like he was like a little rocker. Like he was my kid, of course. And he looks back at that and people would confuse him all the time in public. Like, oh, this girl, even though it wasn't like an attractive girl,
Yeah.
but they just saw the long hair and people would assume girl and same thing. And he just owned it. He didn't care. He didn't care what they thought of him or, how he had his hair. He liked his hair long and he was just going to keep it that way. And same thing. He'll see pictures. He's like, Mom, why'd you let me wear my hair like that? I'm like, why not? Do what I let you just do you. There was no judgment there for me.
Right, exactly. But I think there's that space of healthy exploration like that, yet teaching men, and I know we know this simply because of some of the circles that we run in, but it's like we need men to be the masculine men. We need them. Here, this is I think I've had such a realization in it, particularly over these last few months, where the last 6 years since being divorced, the last 3.5 of them being mom, dad, brother, sister, grandma, grandpa, like all the things to my kids, I'm fucking tired.
Yep.
I was not designed to be all those roles.
Yep.
And when we just accept that and just say, it's okay for me to need a partner to some capacity, right? Like we get to rely on each other and we get to balance that back to that balance. Man, that might be a word for me this year and I just don't even know it. Back to that balance of it's okay to have both and it's okay to accept the need for both. It's so freaking K.
Yeah, but that's a loaded question too. And that's a big one that I had to work on this year was that whole inclination of receiving because I was so independent. I was so wore every single hat. I so did everything that it almost became like I couldn't receive because in my mind, and again, we travel back to childhood trauma. If I take something from you, I now owe you, or now you have something over me. And so for me, I'm going to earn my way. I'm going to do my thing. I will not take, I will not submit. I will not succumb. Those are all the thoughts that would come through my head when I just thought about receiving genuine love, compassion, gifts, whatever. It was just like, no, that comes with something.
So this would be a great exercise, like going back to that 90-second one we talked about earlier. If you're noticing, because I was the same way. I've gotten so much better. In fact,
I have too. That was last year. I mean, I've worked my ass off on that one.
Yep. It's like, oh, thank you. Please and thank you. Please and thank you. And I'm like, this feels good. This feels good. Like, we're going to try to, anyway. And the brain's like, where?
And just letting it be. It's like, oh God. Okay. Yes. It feels good.
Or even compliments, right? Like just it's something so stupid as compliments, but this would be a great exercise for the audience to do that for like the word receiving. Set the timer for 90 seconds and see what comes out. And 90% of our issue is awareness, right? If we're like, oh, snap, that one time at band camp, I got totally abused when I, took something and they leveraged it over me and all the things, like I said, even with the value with my kids, if I
Yeah.
don't make this massive amount of money that I'm
Mm.
not going to now have value. Well, that came from my mom. Like it's in an unhealthy way. So
Yep.
discovering that, it's just like, oh shit. And then just discovering it, half the time you lose the chains over stuff like that.
Oh, 100%. And then the more you like continue to process it, you see all the different examples in your life and in your
Yes.
current life and your past life. And it all starts connecting in this beautiful way where there's just so much self-awareness. It's like, damn, so this is
Yep.
it. This is amazing.
Yes. Yes, yeah, that's so true. Yeah, you start to see the patterns, you start to see the habits. If you're somebody who keeps dating the same kind of person,
Mm.
go identify like narcissist, write down all the things that you think of a narcissist, choose one word and do this exercise and start flushing out what's going on for you.
Dude, I am so glad you brought that up because I think even just that word alone has become so commonplace. Like, oh, he was just a narcissist. Every narcissist, like that's just like everyone's a narcissist, and almost like we're all just victims. And it's like, well, okay, like percentage wise, I doubt there's that many narcissists really in our
Right.
world. So what's that mirror? And that's how I've started to look at things. That's reflecting back to me. That's making me think that way because it's obviously coming from within. Because I'm pulling
Yes.
in all these things around me to show me what I need to work on.
Totally, totally. It was really interesting that again, I keep referencing that book, but it was so rich.
Yeah.
He had talked about the difference of why people will date a narcissist. And it's basically, and I can't even remember how he worded it, but it was something along the lines of if that's what we're doing and that's a pattern that we see in our life, we're getting something out of feeling
Mm,
abused. We're getting something out of being mistreated, of being disrespected. Well, why? Why are we getting fed? So that's where it all circled back to me, where I thought,
mhm.
man, I've got several relationships, and not so much very tight personal ones, but enough where I saw a pattern, especially in my past, right? Like a few years ago, I was like, holy shit, everybody in my life treated me like crap to some extent.
Yeah.
Well, back to that value. If I didn't value myself, if I don't feel like Brenda's enough value to my kids, only then does it have to be attached to providing enough money. But if I had felt valuable to everyone and anyone, no matter what, apart from anything I bring to the table, just an authentic, powerful, passionate woman, then I've got to have
Mm.
some addition to bring value, right? And so that's
Mhm.
where we really go down this rabbit hole. And you and I, we are the same in that regard, where I love this dark, where it's like, oh, bring it. Come on, let's go
Yeah.
deeper. Let's dig harder. You know what I mean? Dig
Yeah.
faster, dig harder. And then when we see that, though, now we can just say, oh, hell, I bring value to the table. Why would I even think that way in my subconscious? And we're done. And you move forward.
And you move forward. Yeah. It reminds me of a book I read last year. It was almost a year ago, and it's called very similar, but it's called The Existential Kink. And it talks about, it's so good. You'll love it. But it
Okay.
talks about that thing that you hate the most. And for me,
Yes.
when I first read it, it was this whole like, I'm alone. I'm going to die alone. I'm, destined to be alone, whatever it is. I was like
Yeah.
on this alone trip and I could see all these times in my life where I've created it.
Yep.
But it was saying, you have some, like exactly what you said, you have some sick, perverse satisfaction out of being alone. That's why you
Yes.
keep fucking creating it. And once I
Yep.
like, really embrace that, not just like, okay, yeah, sure, yeah, everyone wants to die alone, okay. But once I like said, okay, but what is it? What am I getting out of it? And that's where I've been this year with all the meditations. Like, I actually fucking love it, man. It is amazing. This thing I thought I hated, I actually fucking love. And instead of resisting it and trying to fill it, just be with it. And now that's where I'm finding my authentic self is like, fuck yeah, dude, that's where you get your power. Like you are obviously there for everybody. You love everybody. You're mama bear. You got all that, but you also fucking really love yourself and you really enjoy being by yourself. And you don't like to compromise. No.
Oh yeah, totally. I have standards. I have really, really high standards. My kids, my youngest one, he's like, Mom, when are you gonna find a dad? And I was like, whoa, first of all, that's not gonna happen. Number two, secondly, I was like, when one is fit to be a part of this family, that's when, right? Like, because the standards they rock and they roll up here.
Oh
If
yeah.
I'm outdoing you in some capacity, and not that, like whatever, but it's like if I'm outperforming a dude, I'm sorry, but my respect level just instantly got lost. And then we have no we have no shot together. But anyway, we've got high standards.
Yeah. And
I
as
have,
you should, especially when you're bringing someone into your family, right? It's not like it doesn't just affect you. You've
right.
got the whole package that it's going to affect.
Yep, totally. Yeah, yeah. So you've got to be a king to come sit with this queen in a big, big way, you know?
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
my
That
boys
pool
are
is
cool,
very
I know. So we
It's
might
very
just,
small, that pool of
yep,
beings.
I'm very well aware, Angie. Front and center, sister. We're gonna be
I
bumping
love
our
being
wheelchairs
alone.
together. Yep. It's all good. It's all good. But at least we're comfortable being, oh, that's what it was. When you were talking about this earlier about being alone, some sick and twisted. It could be, and oftentimes it is, like with mine was a value, it was sick and twisted. And sometimes it's something that's just comfortable for us. The
Yeah.
brain loves known. And if we're in a place of familiarity, because we might have experienced a lot of loneliness as a child or whatever it might be, that's a place of familiarity. If you're attracting often partners that are chaotic and psycho, somewhere along the line you associated love with chaos, right? Like
Mhm.
if your parents were chaotic and they had a lot of shit going on, which both mine were
Mhm.
radically chaotic, then you associate that. So you can't, you're like, why do I keep attracting these morons? This is not what I want. It's not about that. It's the frequency you're putting out. This is familiarity for me, and
Yeah.
this is what it means to be loved. So now you go and you go find those people that give you that same sensation of
Mm.
that you normalized around this emotion of love or
I,
loneliness or whatever it is.
I love that. That's that comfortable hell, right?
Yep.
Like it's
Yes.
easier just to stay in this because it's comfortable
Yes.
than try something I've never done before because that's scary and uncomfortable and unfamiliar.
Well, and it's hard. Back to the neural pathways, you have to now
Right.
sever these ones and you have to rebuild other ones. And your brain is going, this is too much work. I don't want to do this. This is hard
Yeah.
work. It's like
Yeah.
running a marathon. It's like if you ask me to go be a cardio chick, I'm going to be like, fuck you.
Yeah.
My brain
Not
says,
happening.
nope, we do not wire that way.
And we refuse to wire that way.
Yeah, we don't need to wire that way. Leg day is cardio.
Yeah.
Enough for me.
Oh, I
Anyway.
love that. So, and I know I'm going to be mindful of your time here. There was one thing that happened last week, and I'm just curious if you've heard about it. And I had no idea. So I was like, dealing with my work stuff, and things were getting a little stressful. And I was like, oh, I was in such a great place all weekend, and Monday's coming, and I can tell like all that stuff. It's right there for
Yep.
me Monday morning, that I'm going to have to confront and deal with and make decisions and all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'm going to watch Star Wars. I told you this from the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch Star Wars because I can always get some very deep lessons there where it's not real, but it's real enough. Like
Yeah.
I like this little fantasy world. And then I turn on my TV and my eyesight's not the best. And I was like, what did that just say? And I get close to it and it was like Gaia TV. And I was like,
Yeah.
what is Gaia TV? I'm like, well, it sounds fascinating because I've been learning so much about, Gaia and all this other stuff. And I was like, holy shit. So of course I had to get it. And like you said, there's so much science behind all the stuff that you and I are talking about. I
Mhm.
mean, there's so many challenges. It's superpower, it's ancient geometric designs, it's this, it's that, it's been around
Yes.
forever. It's all about energy. It's like every program I turn on, I'm just like, wow, this is what I've been looking for as far as like education and further learning in this realm and
Yep.
how history always repeats itself. There's always it just
Back
reinventing
to the
itself
known.
over and over, and then how to become aware of the energy to use it for our good and the good for everyone.
Yeah, that's the whole collective conscious conversation, and then us filtering back to the known,
Yeah.
where on a subconscious level, energetically, that's what we're comfortable with. We're comfortable with creating war with each other, with abusing each other, with all the things. It just blows my mind. Hey, Joe Dispenza has his, I think it's Rewired series on there.
Yeah.
You gotta watch it. It's badass.
Yeah.
Guy
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
amazing. That's one of my favorite.
Oh, so you've watched the whole series? Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, a couple times actually. I even had my kids watch it. This was a couple years ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah, there is so much on it. Like now I'm going to sleep with it because I always had to have TV just to draw my brain out so I could go to sleep and not think about work. But yeah, I'm just living in that world. I'm loving it. It's so cool.
So let's hit on that though, because when you say like I have to go to sleep on that, what you're doing, you're choosing what goes in. You're choosing
Mm-hmm.
the input. You're choosing, like Fox News has not been on my TV for years. Honestly, since Obama got elected, it was made so much about race. I was like, this has nothing to do with his race, and I'm so sick of hearing about this superficial excuse of what's going on just to cause dynamic, with people.
Yeah.
I'm telling you what, not listening to the news and choosing what input gets to come into my ears. I think you and I talked about this before, but one of my favorite apps it's called Brain Tap. Like tap
Mm.
dancing, Brain Tap. It's the Brain Tap app. But they've got like 20-minute meditation slash neuro-linguistic programming with
Mm,
binaural beats and the isochronic tones and all these things to literally rewire your brain for you sometimes when you can't do it. You would love that too. It's very similar to Gaia and all that stuff, but they're
mhm,
very focused where it's like if you've got PTSD from military or you want to improve your golf game, they've got a series for salespeople. They've got all these specific ones, or your health or addiction. They've got a whole addiction series
mm,
for addiction and recovery, and you're literally reprogramming your brain. We have done like not our own study in the house, like whatever, but we've done our own study where we've muscle tested beliefs
mm.
prior to sitting in on one of those sessions between my kids and I, and it does rewire and change your beliefs. Because at the end of the day, that's
Wow.
really what we're doing is changing our beliefs.
Wow. And I love that you've done this with your kids. Like, this is
Oh, hell yeah.
so awesome.
Oh, my kids, I tell my kids, this is why I'll probably never find a man. I'm like, I look at my kids and I'm like, you guys are fucking exceptional. You guys are such badass humans. You're more emotionally mature than 99% of the population. And yeah, like finding a dude that's going to beat my boys out, that's going to be a tough one.
Dude, I didn't know that was a thing until recently when I was like, yeah, I created the perfect man and it was my
Yep.
son. And
Yep.
everyone's like, yeah, that's what happens. And I was like,
Yep.
oh, my poor husband never had a chance. Like, because
Nope.
you're creating the likeness of what you want.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, totally. I always say it. I was like, I'm just looking for one of my boys just older and not related.
I'm not sharing the same bloodline would be super
Yeah,
hard.
that's that. I draw the line somewhere. I mean, I do have standards.
Oh my God.
Anyway.
I thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for dressing up for me today, or at least just,
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
on, because I get where you're at. We are there. I'm here for you as well if you ever need
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, and I'll keep my ears, like I said, to the ground. Any thoughts that I have? And Angie, I just always value and appreciate every time we get to hang out and have the conversations. We're so like-minded, it makes it easy. It's fun conversation.
Oh my God, I know. We could talk for hours and hours and hours. We are of the same what do they call it? Ilk. And we are very similar. And then and I realize, and I've said this to people, like, I know that makes me sound narcissistic. Like, I love you because you're like me. But
No,
at the same time, that's why we have the people we have in our lives to show us the good in ourselves, right? Not in a
yes,
narcissistic way, but to recognize the good in others and then have that realization, like, wait, you possess that quality too. That's probably why
yes,
you like that in them.
yes, exactly. We couldn't identify it if we didn't possess the quality, right? And so, yeah, it's not a narcissistic thing. Well, I don't know when there's a rat. My ex-husband was diagnosed narcissist, right?
Mm, mhm.
Like full tilt. Uh, I- but somehow we've gotten away from this ability to be okay with being okay with ourselves. Like
Mm,
I am in love with myself. I am happy with myself. I do walk by the mirror and there's always going to be things, but I've learned to accept and love and value even those things that I didn't used to love, right?
yeah.
And we get to have that opportunity and we get to explore ourselves that way because, and the reason this is so important, we can only give or get what we have for ourselves. If we haven't fully forgiven ourselves, you know damn well you did not really forgive that person that cut you off on your drive into work today, right? Like you were
Mm,
still holding that grudge and you're still pissed off. Well, the reality is you can only give or get what you have for yourself. If you don't authentically truly love yourself and are confident in you, you go out and you start dating strong women like us and say you're too strong, and then your ego gets butthurt, and now you're creating chaos in the relationship because you haven't done your work, right? And
mm.
so this is how this all works, where it's okay to be okay with us. We need to be better at taking care of ourselves.
And being proud about it,
Yes.
yeah, I love myself. And you're right. I mean, I remember this shift. And it occurred when my daughter was going away to camp. She would go up to Big Bear, and there was kids from all over the world. They all went to the same camp, and it was like a magical paradise. It was like Harry Potter up there. And when she was little, it was
I
just
want to
like
go.
all the things. I was like, wow, this is amazing. I'm so glad I can, you can do this. But then there was a shift where it suddenly became not okay to be themselves. And the kids had to start identifying with, I'm bipolar, I am bi, I am this, I am that. Like, if you were normal or you liked yourself, you were cast out because
Yep.
now you had to identify with all these labels and issues and problems. And
Yeah.
loving yourself was like not cool at
Yep.
all. And so kids like turned into this self-loathing, and it's like
Yes.
I specifically remember that shift in when it happened in time. And we've got to swing that pendulum back where, like,
Yeah.
it's cool to love yourself.
I mean, this is another whole friggin' podcast about this alone because
Yes.
there's this weird thing going on with kids. I mean, my older two are 17, 19, right? They compete for I have the worst story than you.
Yep.
Like they
Yep.
compete for that space. I'm like, what in the hell are you guys doing? Like as a society. And thank
Yeah.
God my kids don't buy into that. But then I said to them, I was like, you guys are going to be the leaders of the damn world. Like if your people, this as a whole people group, age group, this
Yeah.
is really where you guys are at mentally. Like, holy shit. How about we embrace what we're badass at? But part of that is society has conditioned us where you can't have guns, you can't do this, you can't be black, you can't be white, you can't be yellow. Fuck, you can't be anything without there being some anti whatever it is group that has a whole month on the gosh damn calendar. And we like us normal people or people who are just doing the good things, we're it's just a bizarre thing. It's such a weird dynamic.
It is. It
So
is.
that's
And
a
it's
whole other
permeated.
podcast.
It is we can go deep down that hole. But I mean,
Dude.
it is what it is. And I just got to say that's why we're here. So we can try to
Yes.
shift that narrative and empower our kids and our people and the people we love and the people we know and the people we're helping to not be in that box of identification of this lower level.
Because there's freedom there. That's what
Yes.
you and I, we know the amount of freedom that we have in this space. People think it's confining and scary and all the things. Man, you get through the moat, there's the most beautiful castle on the other side. And it is something you've never, ever guessed you could experience or explore. It's pretty fantastic.
I'd like to go to that castle. Let's go to that castle.
Yeah,
Let's go.
girlfriend,
Let's
I'm
go
living
do
in
some
that
equine
castle.
therapy in the castle.
Yeah, hell yeah. No. I choose to live in that castle. I just heard this the other day, and then I do have because I've got an appointment out. But well, it was actually on that brain tap, and I was listening to it, and one of the questions was, "What do you want to create today?" And that really hit two major dark shadow work issues in us people. What do you want to create? We don't allow ourselves to want. Like we may say it or like I want those shoes so we go buy it, but we're really not allowing ourselves, what do we really want? What do we really want in life? Am I living the life that I really want? Well, for the most part, I fucking am. Like I love my life. There's so much in my life that is just incredible. And what do we want to create? Like creating, we've lost that art of creativity, going back to we can only give or get what we have for ourselves when we create the human that we know is so beautiful inside of us, and we create a life around that. Now we get to go, our cup overflows, right? And we get to give all that goodness to everyone around us. And I think it's a really great, I've been asking myself that every single morning. I've made a commitment to myself. I'm going to ask that every morning. What do I want to create? What do I want to create on this podcast today? What do I want to create in my next appointment? What do I want to create when my kids come home? What do I want? And I get to create it. And I have the power to create it.
That's the key right there, is recognizing the power that we have.
Totally.
And that's all creation. I love it.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, girl. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on. We'll let you know when it's going out so you can share and do all the things.
Sounds perfect. Hey, hang in there and I will keep my ear to the ground.
Okay, awesome. Have a great day.
Anything I can do, help, let me know.
Awesome. Will do.
All right.
Thank you.
Love you, babe. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.